A little further every time we start talking.
With good reason, I would.
So the word design, or the term design opportunity does come into play.
Oh, absolutely. And you know, you don't have to stick with what I did here. I mean, you can do whatever you want with these segments.
What you're doing is duplicating close to what you've already done.
Yeah, I am, because I found something that worked. And you can, I mean, all those multi-axis pieces you see over there are variations of this. You can move these. I mean, I can go in any angle I want at this point and cut another segment and get another. I mean, I don't have to put an undercut here. I could scallop it the other way. You get a different look every time you make a different cut. And another really interesting story, when I was down at the SWAT Symposium this last year, or summer, oh, what's her name? She's doing a multi-axis stuff now.
Barbara Dill.
Barbara Dill. Then they announced Barbara Dill, and they said, the lady said, and she makes these wonderfully crooked sticks. I thought, how to be? You sit there making this nice artwork, and they think it's crooked sticks. Well, if you don't do it halfway decent, that's what it can come out looking like. And the one you're in hand there, that's kind of a crooked stick. That was as an experiment. So
that cap you put on the end, if you don't want to duplicate it, you could have. Oh, you could have a blue million holes in it.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. You can go any angle. I've got like 4 or 5 holes in here from different things I've done. I just keep reusing the same block. But yeah, there's nothing that says you have to stick with my design here. It's just one that I found that works, and so I'm going to demo it. But I've repeated it several times, and I've gotten pretty close replicas of the pieces, because I think candlesticks are something you really need 2 of. But just me, you don't have to.
What you don't want to do is promise somebody a match set of 12.
Oh, right. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I should have slowed this down a little bit. So this is actually not too bad.
As you say, it's just a wood spinning.
But there's not much shaking here. I mean, if you're getting your lathe and at this point it's really rattling or jumping, you find a frequency that it calms down. And most times you'll find that it shakes a bunch in one spot, and you speed it up a little bit more, and it'll calm down. And then you keep going higher, and it'll shake some more, and then a little higher, it'll calm down. So there's those harmonic frequencies that you can deal with to get the spot where it doesn't shake. And as you cut, it lightens the wood, which means that the frequency can change a little bit, etc. Okay, so I'm going to cut all the way in. I hope I can pull this off. I'm going to cut all the way into the stem here. And it's important that you keep your fingers behind the tool rack. Very important. You'll know when you didn't. Okay, I'm going to make one more cut, and I'll stop so you can see what it looks like already. It's very difficult to visualize what this thing is going to look like. I mean, obviously you have one right in front of you, so it's easier. But as you're doing it on your own for the first time, it's very difficult to visualize what is this thing going to come out looking like. So you can already see, maybe you can, yeah. You can already see the top of that scallop, of that piece. So it's starting to come out. Just keep on working my way down. Now, while you're doing this, as I'm cutting this piece, I'm not looking at where the tool is cutting. I am looking on the top side of the piece. I want to be able to see how the shape changes. It's important, though, if you can't see the wood real clearly off the background because of the shadow, so you've got solid wood and then you've got shadow wood. If you can't see the shadow real clearly, put a different background behind it. So white piece of paper if you're using dark wood, get some magnets, stick it down here. Fortunately, the floor here is really dark and this is light wood, so I'm not having any problem seeing the wood. But if you can't see the wood clearly, get a background behind the wood that makes it stand out a bit more. Alright, so now I'm going to make, if I can find the tool I want. Here. I'm going to make this So this is like this. I want to make this big shelf right here. I'm going to cut into that. I got a 1/2-inch spindle gouge here. It helps when you're this far off the tool rest to have a pretty good sized tool. You do it with a 3/8. Push this down. As I'm doing this, I'm being very cautious. I got my whole hand on the tool rest. I'm just pulling it down a little bit. So I know you're supposed to stop the lathe every time that you do move it, but if you do it very cautiously, I think you can get away with it. Okay, so I want this guy to, now I got to push it back up again. I'm going to go back to the skew and I'm going to make this V cut. Actually, I'm going to push this in. If I'm going to move the tool in, I'm definitely going to stop it because it's hard to see. So I'm going to get it fairly close here. I'll make some V cuts with the skew. This is a bevel rubbing cut on either side. It can get away from you very easily. I recommend that you practice your skew chisel on some regular wood, some junk wood. It's fun to make things. I know the pros always say, oh, you should go down to your shop and just take a stick and turn beads and toes for a couple of hours every night or something to practice. I personally look at that and say, what fun is that? Try to make something. That's what I like to like. Even if it comes out horrible, at least you feel good having made something. The creative side of me, I guess. Okay, so now we're getting really close. Now I'm going to cut that shape onto the bottom of this. This one's looking a little bit different than the previous ones. Just fine. The shape I'm after, though, I want that, it's hard to do. I want the bottom of this to come right up to the outside of the stem. You don't have to. You can leave it the way it is, but I guess I just like it that shape. Very difficult to make this cut because the detail gouge is going to scrape the other side of the wall, so you pretty much have to use a sharp skew to get that deep. And I like the look of one thing sitting on top of another. I had a friend of mine pick one of these up. He studied it for a second. He pondered it and said, that's one piece of wood, isn't it? That's the enjoyment for me. I'm like, yeah, you know, you caught on. It's not three pieces glued together. But you have to think about it for a second. I also had a coworker come to my office and he looked at one of those on the table over there. He studied for a second and said, you know, at first I thought the person who did that must have been really bad because they couldn't get anything straight. Well, it goes both ways. I really think some of this turning is really turning for turners because your average audience is not necessarily going to get it. And I appreciate that. My wife obviously doesn't get it. She looks at it and she'd be like, well, it would have been nicer if you just would have made it round. She's probably right. If I was selling this in a craft show or something, I probably would have been better off if I just made it round. Okay. So I'm going to do this pretty wide cut here. This is going to be the top. I want to make this kind of as round as possible. When you're making these cuts, I'm looking at the top, as I said, and I'm trying to look at that arc that I'm cutting. This is true of any bowl or anything else you do. Try not to have any lines or sharp turns or a spot where it bends. You know, you want a nice clean arc. You don't want something that does this. You see that little wonky move right there in the middle of your cut, and you will see it.